If you've been following this channel, then you know I live in Michigan, which is an unfortunate circumstance given it's currently March. Now, as I dream of better, warmer days, my mind has wandered back to Florida, a state we've covered in our Exploring the United States series already, but has much more history and folklore to offer than I possibly could have explored in a single list format video. Because of that, today we're taking a quick flight from my chilly home to the southernmost point in the United States, and we're going to start exploring the country one city rather than state at a time. So take off your winter coat and throw on your tank top, because today we're exploring haunted places in Key West, Florida. To start, we're going to be talking about the Lady in Blue. The Lady in Blue is a spirit that's said to dwell in Captain Tony's Saloon, a bar in Key West that, when built in 1851, was an ice house that doubled as a morgue. The Saloon has played host to many famous individuals in its time, such as Ernest Hemingway, Shel Silverstein, and Jimmy Buffett. But among these famous residents is also a mysterious woman. It's said that at one point, on Key West, there were about 20 people that were hanged from a tree that actually grows through the center of what is today Captain Tony's Saloon. This woman was among them. This isn't just a wives' tale either, as in the 1980s, when Captain Tony's Saloon was being renovated, construction workers actually found bones from dozens of individuals underneath the soon-to-be bar. Among these bones was a gravestone of a woman named Elvira, which is kept where it was found, on the floor of the billiard room. Now, regardless of whether Elvira is this woman in blue, it's said that some woman haunts the bar. And it's worth noting, the crime she committed to be hanged, they say that she ended the lives of her husband and 2 children, and that she was hanged so soon after her capture that when you see her, she's still wearing the same blue blood-stained dress that she felled her family in. Now, why she committed these crimes isn't really clear, but speculation by locals says that she just went crazy or that she caught her husband cheating on her. Regardless, she's still said to visit the bar, giving patrons a spook when they catch sight of a woman roaming the saloon in a blood-stained dress. Our second story is that of Robert the Doll. The story of Robert the Doll starts with another Robert, a young boy from the 1900s who was gifted a straw-filled doll by his parents. This boy loved his doll so much that he not only brought it with him everywhere, but also named the doll Robert after himself. Although this childish glee would end quite soon when the family, named the Ottos, would hear their son Robert having two-sided conversations with himself while alone in his room. But the thing is, he was supposedly having these conversations in 2 different voices. It got worse too. In the middle of the night, the young Robert would wake up in his bedroom screaming sometimes, and his parents would often run into his room to find overturned furniture, which the young boy blamed on Robert the Doll, who was often found sitting upright at the end of his bed. Robert the Doll may have also had a jealous streak, as apparently other toys were mysteriously found torn apart, and mysterious giggling was occasionally heard throughout the home. Eventually, this apparent harassment by a child's toy got so out of hand that Robert the Doll was moved to the home's attic. This relocation lasted for years, until Robert the boy, following him moving to New York and Paris for a time to study art, was now Robert the man, and inherited his parents' Key West mansion after their passing, moving into the Key West home with his wife Annette in 1930. After moving back, Robert found his old friend in the attic and brought him back to his bedroom in the home. Soon after, rumors began to swirl that Robert the man was a bit of a hermit and spent his days painting alone beside Robert the Doll. Even after eventually getting married, this obsession didn't pass, and there are many stories of Robert's wife becoming frustrated with his affinity for this doll. Now eventually, in 1974, Robert Otto passed away, as did Annette 2 years later, and Robert the Doll was donated to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. To this day, he's stored in this museum, on display for all to see. They say, though, that just because he's stored away doesn't make you safe, though. Some folks, for instance, have taken Robert's photo without asking, and have soon after found themselves getting into car wrecks or worse. Next up, we have the Bahamian Guardian. It's said that in Key West Cemetery, where more than 75,000 individuals are buried, there's a woman who has appeared in front of visitors, watching them to ensure that they are giving those resting in the cemetery due respect. It's said that if you sit on a gravestone or step on a headstone, you might hear a whispered threat or yelling in your ear, and if you do, you have nobody else to blame but the Bahamian Guardian, or perhaps yourself. Regardless, if you're being respectful, you're at least safe from this one, but disrespectful visitors have reported time and time again that they've been scolded or even given a dirty look by a vanishing image of a Bahamian woman. At number 4, we have the Ernest Hemingway house. If you didn't know, Ernest Hemingway, the author, spent quite a bit of time in Key West, loving it so much that he'd even purchased a Key West mansion during his time in South Florida. Today, this house and the 6-toed cats that are the descendants of Hemingway's cat still dwell on the island, and some say so does Hemingway himself. It's said that if you're passing by Hemingway's house on Whitehead Street in Key West, you might spot the famous novelist peering out of a window at passerbys or perhaps sitting at his desk. It's also said that some folks touring the home have heard the sounds of a typewriter clicking away, only to find nobody in the room with them when they looked inside. If you're interested in visiting the home and trying to see Ernest for yourself, you can visit it at 907 Whitehead Street, still standing in Old Town, Key West. At number 5, we have the ghosts of the Firehouse Museum. In a museum dedicated to the history of firefighting in Key West that used to be an old firehouse itself, first opened in 1907, it's said by the museum itself that if the walls of the station could talk, you wouldn't believe the stories they had to tell. But the thing is, if the tales are true, it sounds like the walls may actually be able to talk. In this old fire station that once housed horse-drawn steamers and carriages with water and horses aboard, it's said that there are a handful of notable ghosts. One of these ghosts is a young African-American girl that was captured in a group photograph taken at the museum that, per the museum curator, wasn't actually there when the photo was taken. Apparently in this photograph, the woman was dressed in clothes from the early 1900s, looking distinctly out of place in the photo. There's also apparently some poltergeist activity. At one point, the museum curator's mattress spontaneously moved from where it rested, without any prompting, and another time, as the curator was speaking about an old fire chief, one Joseph Bum Farto, a nearby bicycle tire spontaneously exploded off of a bike. This old fire chief had mysteriously disappeared after being convicted of a crime in 1976, but it sounds like he might have been right under the firehouse's nose the whole time. There's also a beautiful young Bahamian woman wearing a dress that has been seen wandering the halls of the firehouse. This woman isn't scary like some ghosts, but rather the individuals who have seen her have said they've been filled with glee and positivity. In one tale, a guest visiting the museum recalled being invited by the woman in a yellow dress down the firehouse corridor, only to enter the room they saw the Bahamian woman go into and find themselves alone. Finally, there's a man referred to as Frank that apparently makes himself at home in the men's restroom. The story goes that one day in the men's restroom, a museum guest saw a man in the bathroom and asked him if he needed any help, but Frank simply told the man that his name was Frank and that he only needed the mirror. Upon the man leaving his bathroom stall, after shrugging this off, he found that he was alone in the bathroom. Let's be realistic though, this isn't that weird, is it? I mean, people do leave bathrooms. At number 6, we have Captain Watlington's house. This home is the oldest home in Key West, and having survived hurricanes, fires, and floods, it's only fitting that some of its old residents have also apparently survived the test of time to exist into the present, if only in spectral form. This home was built originally in 1829 by one Captain Richard Cousins, who crafted it expertly to withstand even the harshest conditions that the nearby ocean had been able to throw at it. The home has 4 rooms now, as well as a center half, having been renovated and built up over the years to accommodate Captain Francis Watlington, his wife, and their 9 children in the 1800s. Captain Watlington, as the name Captain would suggest, held positions ranging from wrecker to coastal pilot for the Navy, and even eventually worked for the Customs Office, and was a representative for Florida's House of Representatives. Now, this home at one point had an on-site caretaker, apparently named Charles, who at night would lock up the home, checking the windows and doors in every room, and although despite checking and ensuring he was alone in the home, this didn't stop him from hearing creaking floors, rocking chairs, and walking on the old, creaky floors in the middle of the night. Despite this, he didn't think much of it until the old caretaker stopped by for a visit, sharing with him that he too had experienced rocking chairs and footsteps in the middle of the night, but also the spirit of a young woman roaming the house, something Charles hadn't yet experienced. In this old caretaker's story, he heard someone playing marbles and saw a little girl playing marbles on the floor of a room. He chased after her, and she ran off, but when she ran into one of the empty bedrooms, the caretaker followed her and found it empty, as you would expect. Apparently, this led Charles to invite a psychic, who, after some perusing, explained to Charles that Captain Watlington's wife and one of her daughters had stayed in the home after their passing, and that, lucky for him, the spirits dwelling in the home were kind-hearted. Apparently, after hearing the story, Charles yelled to the room where the rocking chair was rocking, "Good night, Emmeline," the name of Captain Watlington's wife, and right on cue, the chair started rocking one night. At number 7, we have the Old Monroe County Jail. Now, as we've seen in my Exploring the United States series, prisons are often considered haunted places, and the Old Monroe County Jail in Key West is no exception. This jail was built in 1828, and its strong construction leaves it standing today, although parts of the county jail were demolished or renovated over the years, with only the rear portion of the jail remaining today. Despite this, many Key West locals claim that the Old Monroe County Jail is indeed haunted. To start, while we've heard on this little trek that hangings did occur in trees in Key West, there were also hangings of prisoners by prisoners in the jail itself. There's one particular tale that's actually quite tragic of this sort of thing occurring, and I'll just give you a warning that this story contains references to self-harm. This prisoner was named Auxilio Perez, and he wasn't actually a prisoner at all, or a criminal, but rather a man being held in the prison before he could be transferred to a mental institution, given he was self-harming and had been caught doing so. Briefly one night, Perez was left unattended, and during this brief time, he took his own life, using his belt. Some individuals affiliated with the prison and locals still say that you can observe the apparition of Perez, referred to as the Hanging Man, around the prison to this day, and cite his strife as the reason that he couldn't pass on. There's also a story of two lovers of different races, a Spanish man and an Afro-Cuban working girl, whose tragic romance resulted in horrors striking the county jail. These two fell in love and, for a time, lived happily in their Petronia Street apartment in Key West, built in 1921. This mixed-race relationship, though, was considered taboo, and a certain deplorable organization, the KKK, that caught wind of this relationship, decided to take action. Members from this organization attacked the Spanish man, leaving him severely injured, but the man wasn't about to back down, and quickly planned his revenge. Also, the Afro-Cuban woman that he was seeing also didn't back down, and she conjured up some voodoo curses on the men that attacked her lover. Now, on the man's side, he ended up felling one of these clan members that attacked him in the middle of the day, and the town started taking up arms and also taking up sides in this conflict, leading to the police getting involved, promising they'd protect the man if he just surrendered himself. Now at this point, the Spanish man was out of options, so he decided to take the police's deal and got himself booked into the Old Monroe County Jail. Now, unfortunately for the Spanish man, one of the police officers in charge of the jail was a white supremacist, and he sent the Spanish man's guards home and allowed Klansmen to enter the jail and take him with them. These men, after they grabbed the Spanish man, dragged the Spanish man behind their car for a while before finding a tree to hang him from, ending his life. Now, as I said, the Afro-Cuban woman was conjuring up her own sort of revenge by conjuring up a voodoo curse while all of this went on, and apparently it hit its mark. Every single one of the men who had attacked the Spanish man, 5 of them, quickly passed away through various means. One got himself blown up, another was lost at sea during a storm, another hit a reef and got ground to pieces by it, and another got lost fishing. Even the officer who allowed the Klansmen into the jail drowned on a fishing trip. And additionally, there's one more incident worth noting. Apparently the tree that the Spanish man was hanged from, it too died for the part it played in this whole ordeal. And finally, we have the Porter Mansion. The Porter Mansion is a historic home in Key West, Florida, that was built in 1838 by a judge named James Webb, a judge that had a big influence on the regulation of salvaging in the area, and therefore its efficacy as a business practice in Florida overall. This house was eventually passed on to one Dr. Joseph Yates Porter Jr., who lived in this home for 80 years, both being born and passing away in it. This doctor, historically speaking, played a part in the control of yellow fever in Key West and generally in improving the public health of the island. In addition to all of these accolades, he's also apparently a ghost. Nowadays, the Porter Mansion is split up into multiple uses: apartments, a bar, and offices. Now, some of those living in apartments in this building noticed something weird. When you leave coins lying around in the apartment, you might find them stacked together, and that this has happened multiple times and usually follows strange shuffling noises in a room that the resident isn't present in. Additionally, sometimes as residents are sleeping, they'll be awoken suddenly in the night by chamber music coming from another room in the house. But politely enough, the music stops if the residents ask the ghosts to turn the music down. The bar in the mansion has also experienced some poltergeist activity. Apparently one time a bartender felt a presence after closing, only to quickly be alarmed when wine and pint glasses began to fly off of the shelves and onto the floor. There was also a server in this bar that once turned around to find a previously empty table had a man sitting in it dressed in old-timey clothing. The man didn't talk, but rather gestured, asking for some wine, so the bartender poured him some. Apparently a couple of minutes later, the server who was attending to him noticed the man was gone, and the wine was still there. But funny enough, there was a neat stack of coins on the counter, totaling just enough to pay for the wine. Upon her prompting, none of the other customers saw the man, and after looking at a photograph of him, she became convinced that that evening she saw Dr. Porter himself. Woohoo! Now that warmed me up, even if I did get the chills a few times. Thank you so much for joining me on this beach vacation to the Keys. If you liked this video, it'd mean the world to me if you gave this video a thumbs up or even commented saying hello. I'd love to say hi back. Additionally, if you want to see more of this, I encourage you to subscribe and click the little bell icon. It'll tell you when I post my next video next weekend. In terms of announcements, well, as you can see, this is the start of a new sub-series of the Exploring the United States series I've been running, where we go city to city looking at folklore to get a little more intimate. Additionally, soon we'll be seeing the debut of a new History of series, where I take a deep dive into the history of specific places, whether that be a state, a building, a county, or a city, I guess, just like this video. I'd expect these videos to be less frequent though, as they'll probably be between 45 minutes and an hour in length for many places. Who knows, the first video in the series might even cover Key West, but I guess you'll just have to see if that's the case. Anyways, without further ado, again, I appreciate you all coming with me on this journey through Key West. Whether you just saw Ernest Hemingway at the window of a house, or had a wine glass fly off the bar right in front of you, don't you ever forget, it's always story time.